Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 141.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bug and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bug and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome back to the Veterinary Project Podcast. You're joined by Dr. Light and Dr. Bug. Dr. Bug, how are you doing on this Friday afternoon?
I'm doing well, Jonathan. I am doing well.
Excellent. Mike, we're recording this at the start of 2024. We tried not to crystallize what we thought was going to happen in 2024 in one of our last episodes last year, and yet we still did go down that tangent a little bit. How's the start of the year going for you so far? And tell me a little bit about your excitement and or opportunities and optimism in this year thus far.
I'd say overall, I'm pretty excited. I'll be a little more real on it's cliche, but I mean, I set a lot of goals, so that's not cliche, but I don't like the resolution stuff. But either way, I have various habits that I track, around health and my businesses and whatnot. And I was laughing, like in the first week, you would think you should come out of the gates red hot and probably just crush all of these habits. And I'm like fairly spotty at best. And there's been a few random things that have happened, but whatever. But what I've really come to realize is I'm far more gentle on myself, where I'm like, it's a long year. I work under the idea, just do the right things most of the time and it'll all work out. So that's kind of just day to day. I'm very excited in the real estate business. I think it's going to be a great year. We invest in the prairie provinces, so Saskatchewan, Alberta, which is Western Canada for our listeners. I'm really excited about what's coming in this geographical area, and we've got lots of irons in the fire. So hopefully soon one of them lands, but it's one of those games of you got to put in a lot of reps before something actually comes to fruition.
Agree with you. And Western Canada as a whole, we've had it rough for a few years, and it's the exact opposite right now, where, as you described, there's a lot of optimism in the air, a lot of immigration coming in, opportunities for jobs, and with that, people need homes to live in, and there's a shortage of those right now. So you're in the right industry that way, aren't you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, every industry has cycles and ebbs and flows. So it's kind of one of those things. You got to position yourself to survive the downturns. And then when things are good, be bold enough to take action and capitalize. What is one of Warren Buffett's quotes? I think it's Warren Buffett, but he says, when it rains gold, put out the bucket, not the thimble. So I'm not saying it's raining gold, but it's a good reminder when there's opportunities, go for them.
Take them. Well, I'm excited to be able to also have on our podcast today, likely new listeners coming in as a result of who our guest is today, Dr. Marissa Hake. For those, go ahead, you're about to say something.
Well, I was just so you're just going to skip the Jonathan update?
I totally can. Well, I can wrap it in there somehow. It's the beauty of being the host today. I can do what I want.
You always do this. You ask other people questions, and then when it's time for you to answer them, you're like, I didn't hear you. I got to go. Sorry.
You know me too well. Okay, we are having Marissa Hake on. I'll get back to it. Marissa, coming out of the States. I think we're going to have some new listeners out of the States listening to us today. So for those that aren't aware, Western Canada, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, we're out of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Great place to be. A lot of prairie influence because we're on the prairies here in Canada. Similarities to where Marissa comes from in Northeast Ohio. Jumping back to your question, great start to the year. Yeah, and I like your point on self-acceptance because it hasn't been 100% without a doubt. I've missed on a few things, but on the overall, having the downtime over the holidays with my family, not doing a lot of traveling was exactly what I needed to maybe come off that bumping into the burnout area that we're going to talk about today that Dr. Marissa speaks about so well and eloquently. And it's exactly where I was at prior to break. And I really feel energized and rejuvenated as a result of that break. It's exactly what I need. I'm going to do more of that this year.
Nice. You do. I guess I'll tease some future episodes that are coming, but Jonathan and I did some assessments. So they're self-assessments, but then they're comparative because we're looking at how can we work together better. And one of the things for you that jumped out was stress management is really strong. That's what came back on yours. I'm always impressed because running however many vet clinics you run and number of staff, that would be a lot of stress.
I was quite surprised by those results as well, especially considering the time that test was done in December. So I'm not sure how that came out, but she told me I was being truthful because the test tells you that too.
Yeah. No, so it's good.
Yep.
I'm glad you had a good holiday, and I'm always impressed at how well you handle all of the different hats and balls in the air.
Well, thank you. Well, let's continue with this optimism and get Marissa on because they're tired of listening to us already. Marissa, we're going to have an exciting conversation come at you. Short bio for Dr. Marissa Hake is she is a graduate of Michigan State University, where she received her bachelor's degree in animal sciences, a doctorate in veterinary medicine, and a master's in public health. She lives in Northwest Ohio with her full-time farming husband, Travis, and their two sons, McCoy and Hayes. Marissa is passionate about communicating with consumers about modern agriculture through her personal social media accounts at CalfVet on Facebook and at CalfVet on Instagram. Her full-time job is working for Fairlife, yes, the milk brand, as the Director of Animal Welfare and Sustainable Farming for Fairlife. Additionally, she has a beef cow herd of British white cattle that she uber loves, and she spends her days balancing being a farmer's wife, boy mom, veterinarian, and beef producer. We are going to get into a lot of topics on today's conversation, and please enjoy our chat with Dr. Marissa Hake. Marissa, thank you very much for joining us today. The place where I thought we could start, your Instagram feed.
Sure.
I got to know you well before this conversation has taken place as a person that really enjoys your content. But one of those contents, and where I think I'd like to start this question off, is how did you become the storyteller you are? And how did you think of the idea to tell stories while you're putting your makeup on?
That's a great question. I'll just start with how I started on social media. So I really just got started to defend animal agriculture, right? What I was doing every day as my role. I'm married to a farmer and work in agriculture. And so it was like almost getting frustrated every single day of seeing things on social media going against modern agriculture. And so that's how I got started. And then you kind of learn what really pulls people in. And these makeup videos, man, they really get people to sit and listen. So I don't know what it is about. You're like, I want to see what she looks like at the end. Is there, she looked totally different. So yeah, so that's kind of what I used it for one of my videos.
So funny because in prep for this recording, and I appreciate that answer, I was watching a couple of your videos and getting caught up. And one of the latest ones is got you putting your makeup on. I'm going, I shouldn't be watching this. I don't need to be watching this right now. And you get into this weird situation. And I just thought it was quite funny. I'm sorry to start with that question, but really interested and excited about this conversation today. For starters, for our listeners that may not follow you on Instagram or through a number of the social media places, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey that's got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm a Michigan native, went to Michigan State for undergrad and vet school. And I also did my master's in public health there. So I bleed green. Hopefully there's some Sparties that are listening to you guys. And so graduated in 2015 and moved to Northwest Ohio with my husband. He's actually 7th generation on his family farm, which is kind of cool. And so started my career actually on the calf side of the business. So my first kind of 5 years in practice, I was basically focused on calf care. So working with calf ranches in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. And that's kind of when my social media started and speaking and things like that, which I never envisioned for my career. And then in January of 2020, I transitioned to work for Fairlife, the milk brand. So I'm the Senior Director of Animal Welfare and Sustainable Farming. I manage all of our animal welfare governance programs for our supplying farms.
Excellent. And you've been doing that since now January 2020.
Yeah. I've been here almost 4 years now, which is crazy. And I kind of forgot like a really important point is I have 2 young boys. So I have a 5-year-old McCoy and a 2-year-old Hayes. So those take up a lot of my time as well.
And you travel a lot, you're ranchers, you're out in the field, you're doing everything that's needed in a agricultural setting. That's really interesting. You mentioned you started off with a master's in public health. Why jump down that road even before getting into practice?
Yeah, I was actually looking about more to go into food safety. And so they kind of really paired well with a food animal medicine route that I was going. But the public health was a little bit more broad. And so that's why I went that route to kind of have that background.
Okay. And was that directly after your DVM or concurrently with the third, fourth year of your DVM program?
Concurrent.
Concurrent with it. Nice. So you came out with both at the same time then?
Correct. Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, then moving forward into what looks like a 5-year practice career. As you'd said in introductions, you didn't see your life going this way in terms of the social media, etc. When you graduated from school, did you see yourself as practicing veterinarian in practice, or was there always the desire maybe to go something more, especially with that master's being available as well?
Yeah, I guess really with vet school, if you could plan out your future, the way I saw it is I'd go out to practice for maybe 10, 15, 20 years, and then perhaps take a role within industry or something like that. I was really interested in a staff position. So I always really liked the idea of a staff veterinarian for some of our larger farms where you kind of can be on farm every single day, right? I really loved training aspect of being involved with the business. And so that was kind of the role I thought I would go into after graduation. And I did find a role. So through my role, my first 5 years working with a calf company, I did get to do that, right? So I got to be in practice and really have the health side and the practical side, but I also got involved with the business side and things like that. So in training and protocol development and all of those sort of things. So I really did. That's really what I enjoy the most.
Excellent. And just to set the stage for those that would not understand what that means, more cow-calf operations, consulting, larger producers are all attached to the same group. Which one was
Yeah.
it? Was it all attached to the same group or was it multiple
Oh, all
different
attached. Sorry.
operations throughout? Yeah.
No, so it was a little bit of a blend. So the company that I worked for, we had ownership of all the cattle, and then we had raisers that raised the calves for us.
And I'm
So
just
interesting.
curious, when you say a staff veterinarian on a large farm, maybe for our listeners that aren't in agriculture, when you say large, give us some context on that.
Yeah, I would say probably the smallest farm that would really consider having a veterinarian on staff is probably around 3,500 cows, and then would go up from there.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's a real big number. And then January comes along, COVID kicks in right around that time. It looks like that transition, if we're speaking timeline, you'd already made the transition in January 2020 to Fairlife, if I'm reading correctly
Yeah.
here. I'd love to go in a little bit of detail because what we're finding with a lot of the new grads is they get 2-3 years out. They've had that first experience with the first role, and they go, potentially what's out there if I'm not already in my home state, home province, secured with a job or family, etc. You made a big change.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that
I
because I'm
did.
really interested. This is a huge difference.
It was really interesting. It was something that I had never considered, a corporate role. I didn't know those types of opportunities were really out there for veterinarians, to be honest. And I had a friend send it to me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be a really good fit for this position." And I was like, I'm just going to interview. I feel like I'm kind of aligned. And I was really exciting to maybe go into a position where you're not influencing 3,500 cows. You might be influencing 50,000 cows, right? And so I interviewed the position. And it was really interesting to me because the way Fairlife looked at it is they said, "Hey, listen, we could go and hire a seasoned academic animal welfare person for this role. But that's not what we want. We want someone with a technical understanding of animal welfare from the veterinary perspective and from the farm perspective. And to come in here, we will find you those assets if you need them. We'll put an animal welfare council together to help guide you. But we want you to have the boots on the ground with our supplying farms and have a clear understanding of what's happening, right?" And they thought that was really valuable. The other thing that they thought was valuable was communication skills. And I think we talk about this within the veterinary industry all the time, how important our communication skills are, right? And so they looked at my social media, they looked at my speaking and things like that. And they said, "Okay, you can clearly communicate about agriculture, and that's super important to us as well." And so it opened up this opportunity for me to move into this corporate role that I had never even envisioned as a veterinarian, which is really cool.
Now, when you're going to speak on behalf of Fairlife, etc., do you find yourself, I guess I'll back it up a little bit, do you find yourself speaking on behalf of them quite often at these conferences? Is that Dr. Marissa Hake, your social persona, or how does it
Yeah.
all blend together? And then a couple of follow-ups on that.
It's like a tricky line to walk, right? So Calf Vet LLC, it's an LLC now. And so that is my business as far as speaking and social media and merchandise and all of that. So there are situations where I talk on behalf of Fairlife, but there's also situations where I talk as Dr. Hake Cat Vet.
And in that differentiation, when you first went into the role, and again, I might be going into areas I'm not allowed, so tell me if I'm not. Did you
Oh yeah.
differentiate what was cat vet versus your role within Fairlife and where the two could intersect and oppose each other? Because some could say they do oppose each other, but they're probably more synergistic than in opposition. But again, my question is more of, did that discussion happen or it just evolves over time?
I think that's a good question. I believe it evolved over time. So I'm very, very cognizant. So if you go back into kind of the older cat vet stuff before this role, you'll see that maybe I was a little bit more cowgirl with my posts and the content that I would cover, right? And now I'm very cognizant that I, as cat vet, while separate, still am a reflection of the brand that I work for, the industry that I'm in. So I'm a lot more careful about what I post now and a little bit more PC as well. So it doesn't matter where you're at, you're always representing the organization that you're with. So that's the way I look at it.
Is your social media presence has also evolved? And I think the last number I looked at, you have greater than 70,000 Instagram followers. I think it's around 125,000 Facebook followers. Those are big numbers. Those are really big numbers. And without a doubt, you're going to have commentary come both positive and negative. I wonder how that's influenced you, especially within the veterinary space where we tend to not be as boastful for ourselves. We tend to shy
Yeah.
away. And again, I'm generalizing completely, but
No, yeah.
as a general rule.
It's interesting because, like I said, when I got started on social media, I was really focused on sharing content about our industry, connecting with other producers and veterinarians, sharing that sort of educational content. And it was never about building a personal brand. It evolved into that, which is really crazy to me because I remember a point where I was like, I don't like posting pictures of my face. I don't like taking videos of my face. I'd rather show the cows or things like that. But I've done a lot of kind of trust training and things like that through learning how to advocate about agriculture. And you have to show your face. Like they have to feel comfortable with you. They have to feel like they know you to build trust, right? And so when we talk about personal branding, that's really what I've done over the last 5 or 6 years is built this brand Cat Vet that reflects who I am as a person and what I believe in. And I think we're seeing veterinarians do this more and more, especially for their clinics. You know, we always say we build the clinic brand, we build the clinic brand, but it's really the people within the clinic that keep people coming in, right? And that people resonate and trust. And so we're seeing this with more and more. I'm not the pioneer, but there's a lot more that are doing it better than I am. And they're really building their personal brand, which in turn helps build up their clinics, right? And create a bunch of opportunities for them that we really never thought possible. So,
yep, excellent. A couple follow-ups to that then. Trust training you mentioned. I've never heard of that. Totally naive on that. And what is that and where did you find it?
I don't know if there's like a specific trust training. So there's a lot of research in agriculture around trust, right? So we talk about how we build trust on our farms, how we build trust within our agriculture so people feel good about what they're eating and consuming and things like that. And a lot of that goes back to having a person that they trust because people are really influenced by their immediate circle, right? It sounds silly, but there's multiple times that I will have people message me and say, hey, I saw this bad thing, but because I watch your videos, I know you, I've seen you with your animals. I don't think this is true. Oh my gosh. It feels like a small win. Really, it's because we've had that personal connection on a social media platform.
Even if there's not that one-on-one interaction until they've reached out, they've seen what you've done, your actions, your follow through, et cetera, trusted brand they can rely on. How do you handle, Marissa, the pressure of that, knowing you are one of the biggest personal brands now in veterinary medicine, especially on the large animal side, from what I've been able to see related to agriculture and production medicine in America, North America? I don't think I'm wrong by saying that. Any pressures associated with that, or am I putting you on the spot right now? Or you go, and I'm interested in that because you have such a relaxing, casual way about you when I watch and I learn, and there's an education component to a lot of it. So I wonder if there is a piece of it that still is stressful at all, or you're like, no, I'm just going to go with it. And if you like it, great. If not, too bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, if we're being really honest with it. Like when you said that, that makes me cringe a lot. Like, oh, no, that's not me. I think the casual aspect of it is the fact that I've done this for a long time. And I've kind of been put through the ringer as far as social media, as far as being attacked on social media, being called out. You just kind of, you build a thick skin to it. it's been a journey to get here. This wasn't how I was when I first started, for sure. And I don't know, I guess from my point of view is I'm super passionate about one, veterinary medicine, but also agriculture. And so I just continue to try to use my platform in a way that honors both, if that makes sense. So I just try not to have like a division within veterinary medicine. I try to kind of like bring others along and support them and do all those things. I started one of my merch brands is like support your local veterinarian and shirts and hats and things like that. And part of that money goes back to a scholarship for veterinary students. So I just want to do it in a way that really honors the things that I'm trying to support.
Fantastic. Probably an evolution that's happened the last few years. So I appreciate you sharing that and being open because it's not easy and for all of us. And again, everybody's got different levels of it. Mike, I'm taking all the questions up here. So jump in whenever you'd like.
Well, yeah, I'm curious if we go back 5 or 6 years, when you're first starting out and you said you put through the ringer and criticism and whatnot, you developed a thick skin, but while you were developing that, how do you deal with that? Or how did you deal with that? Or maybe advice for someone listening to this that's just starting down that journey, or maybe just got their first piece of criticism online, because I know that holds a lot of people back, that fear of that coming.
I mean, it goes back to our fear as veterinarians. We just have this giant fear of making a mistake or people thinking that we look stupid, or so I've just embraced, I am stupid. You guys know this. You guys see the dumb stuff I do every day on Instagram, right? But to go back to that is like, it's being okay and learning from it and being like, being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is super hard for everybody, right? It's terrifying. It's scary. And so I understand why people don't want to do it. But I think the connections are real. I think the opportunities are real. So really outweighing the static that you're always going to hear. You're always going to hear that in practice. You're not even on social media, right? With the benefits of what you're trying to accomplish. And so I think that just knowing that it's worth the issues that you're going to face.
Worth the journey to get over. Yep. Because
Yeah,
I can think of
that wasn't very eloquent, but
there's 2 or 3 of our personal friends, Marissa, that are going through this right now where they're starting to build a following, etc. And it is both that imposter syndrome plus getting through it or getting through those initial comments that sometimes hold people back. And I know this is discussions I've had with multiples over the last couple of months. And as you said, more and more vets are getting their personal brands out there. It's a great thing. It's excellent to see. Changing gears a little bit, you're a veterinarian. You're in a corporate role. You're a mother, you're a rancher, you've got your own business. How do you try and blend all that together and still stay balanced if that exists?
I think we were going back. I think on the original email, you said, you want to talk about work-life balance? And I was like, no, absolutely not, because I don't know how to do
So then
it.
Jonathan was like, that's exactly what we'll talk about.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll talk on that. The only way that I do all of this is that I have a really good support system. So between my husband, he's wildly supportive, my in-laws, my own parents, my mom helps out with our kids a lot. Like I'm super blessed in that aspect. And I really honestly couldn't do it without them. The other way that I manage it is just like lots of caffeine. And but I gotta say, I think there's certain personality types where you have to kind of have always something new and exciting and really engaging for you. And that's me. So busy and having kind of all these balls up in the air is kind of how I thrive. I don't know if you've heard Dr. Christine Staten talk at all. She's out of Tucson, Arizona. She's fantastic. But I met her in person one time and she was like, oh, you're like me. You operate just below burnout. Anywhere lower, you're bored and you're not having any fun. But listen, if you're a person who operates here, you're going to bump into burnout from time to time. And I don't know why, but it was like an epiphany for me. I was like, oh, it's okay. I know, just accept that that's going to happen, right? Like you're going to get behind, you're going to get burned out, but this is where you are as a person. So that's kind of the way I think about it now.
Love it. And in that regard, we have very similar personalities.
Yeah.
Do you have any systems that you've had to evolve behind the scenes? And I'm using this for our listeners that are going down the same route or want to go down the same route that you are. Assistants, ways of delegating tasks, some of those boring things that don't excite you, that still have to get done. How do you handle those?
Yeah, I've outsourced some stuff. So I have a girl, I don't know what the technical title is, not a personal assistant. I forget what they call them. Anyway, so she manages, so she'll go every 2 weeks and look at my social media stuff. She'll ask me for a ranch update. So she sends out all of my email pushes twice a month of updates around the farm, merch selling, podcasts, things like that. And then she also will do a blog. So she came in and we talked about goals. And I said, one of my goals was we have our British white cattle herd. They're the ones with the cute black nose and ears, and you see them a lot on my page. But I said, I want to optimize. So when people search British white cattle, I want Black Label Farms to be the first one that comes up. And she said, okay. So every month she does a blog post for me to help with the SEO optimization on our website. And so those are kind of the two things that I've really outsourced because they do not bring me joy at all.
Excellent. So those are outsourced. Everything related to social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, etc., that's personally driven by you. You're answering the comments when they come in, etc.
All of it. Yep.
For anybody not watching, she's nodding her head. She's like, yep, I do it all.
Yes.
I do it all. Excellent.
For sure.
If you look at where you were in 2015, graduating vet med, there's always the social beings in the class. Then there's the ones that are more academic, and then there's the odd ones that need to be more social. I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying that. Where did you find yourself on the spectrum? And was this always the comfort zone for you, even though social media wasn't where it is now?
Oh, that's a good question. I categorize myself as an introverted extrovert. So I actually prefer to kind of be by myself and to disengage from people, but I would consider myself an extrovert. I was in the back row of the veterinary class, right, with kind of the chatters and things like that. So that's really where I lay. For me, it's always balance, right? So like academics were important, but the social aspect was also important to me.
Post-COVID, I'm excited to have the students be able to reapproach that part of veterinary medicine and the education, which is so important for after vet school when you still have colleagues that you want to reach out to, have fun, and yet really important part of that career growth together. So I like hearing that. I want to switch gears again. Mike, before I do, any follow-ups on that piece?
No, quick question. I liked how you termed that bump into burnout. I feel like sometimes it gets this very heavy diagnosis, like, oh, you're burnt out, stamp goes on you, and it's like you can never recover from this. I like how you said you just sort of bump into it and you can pull back. Do you have any tactics, or when you're recognizing like, oh, I've been running hard for weeks on end or months on end, I got to pull back here? And if so, what do you do with that? Is that just taking a break, or do you have other ways that you sort of refill or recharge?
Yeah, dissociate and disengage. No, like sometimes that's what it feels like, where I'm just like, I can't look at that email for a week and a half. I didn't say I had healthy ways to deal with it, but it's really recognizing. And at that point, I'm like, I am not taking on anything else. Like, I will say no. And that is the very hard thing for us as veterinarians. I think it's just kind of innately who we are. We're very much yes people, right? Of course we can do that. Of course, right? We'll start setting very, very hard boundaries. And it will be stuff like this. I'll be like, no, I'm not doing any podcasts for the next 6 months. They're not a list, but there's just one more thing that I got to think about, right? And so it's just stuff like that where I just start saying no to all of the things that just kind of the fringe stuff, that like the extras when you're really engaged. And I love that there's like this funny analogy. I don't know who really said it, but it's about we're all balancing balls, right? We're all juggling all the time. But there are glass balls and there are rubber balls. You have to identify what your glass balls are. I'm sure everyone's heard this, but for me, like that's my marriage. That's like these certain really important things that I won't drop, but I might drop the ball on my social media platforms or something at work or, that sort of thing. And so you just got to be okay with letting those balls drop and knowing that they'll bounce back up when you need them.
Absolutely. You put that on your end of year review for sure. You have lots of opportunity. You've been at this for a while. It's fun to have followed your progression. And again, prior to this conversation, even having an origin, now having seen your personal brand, your professional brand, and how they intermingle. Again, looking at the crystal ball 3, 5, 10 years from now, where would you love to see this go in your ideal state? You've got so many options in front of you.
Oh, that's a good question. I've continued, I guess, professionally. I feel like I have a pretty large runway in front of me with my current position. There's a ton that I want to achieve, a really fun brand. It's growing. And so I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity there. Kind of with my personal brand, I continue to think about where that's going to go. And we started the virtual rancher experience 2 years ago, which is an educational platform for beginner ranchers and to learn about cattle handling and raising and things like that. And so continuing to build that out and provide that resource. We're looking at moving our beef business to our storefront. We have actually, I don't know if you guys thought it, but in 2020, we were looking for a place to graze our cattle, our British white herd, and we are deep in row crop country, so it's hard to find. But we bought actually a golf course, a defunct golf course that we raise our cattle on. But so on that, the clubhouse on the golf course would be fit perfectly for a storefront. And so we're looking at moving our beef business there. And so those are kind of the short term, maybe 5-10 years out. And that's really honestly as far as I can look at this point.
2 young kids, multiple careers. That even looks good right there. That's excellent.
Yeah.
As we come to a close here and you're thinking about those next steps in the next 3 years, what do you, and again, flipping the gears and not to go negative, what are hurdles that you see with your current social media outreach, et cetera? Do you see anything there that potentially pops up that would hold you back? Or, hey, world's oyster as far as you guys want to take it as a family and group and business?
Yeah. For me, especially right now, is that my role at Fairlife just continues to grow and grow and grow. And so that's pushed kind of my social media and speaking and things like that to the side a little bit more. So I continue to probably see that as my responsibilities grow on my professional side, that maybe some of that stuff kind of goes by the wayside or changes or evolves or something like that. So that's probably one of the hurdles. Keeping up with social media platforms is always going to be a hurdle. It's always something new, right? It's always a new algorithm, something like that. So I think staying current is going to be a hurdle. And yeah, so I think kind of those 2 big ones for me, at least personally.
Excellent. Well, there is a number of listeners, viewers, veterinary professionals that I know without a doubt want to have that type of impact, whether it's within agriculture or the veterinary space overall. So I'm excited to have them be able to listen to you in your journey and hopefully be able to find you wherever you're at and be able to see it along, because yeah, it's important in this day and age. So thank you, Marissa, for sharing. We're going to move over to the impact round now, as our time has flown through here. Impact round's a number of short questions. The first of which is, are you a cat or dog person? Cows are not included in this question.
Dogs.
Dogs win. True or false? I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was a kid.
True.
How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
Dealing with grumpy farmers and cows.
On a day-to-day basis. What is your favorite hobby other than dressing cows' tails up?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like being outdoors. I like hiking. I like going shed hunting. So yeah, that's part of my hobbies.
And what in this world are you most grateful for?
Oh, my family, my husband and 2 boys.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Marissa, it has been a pleasure having you on. For those that are going to want to get a hold of you or find you on this thing called the intraweb, where do they reach out to? How do they find you?
Yeah,
I have a website that's drhakecalfvet.com. They can find me at Calfvet on Instagram and Facebook.
Excellent. And we'll have those in our show notes for you. Thank you very much for coming on. Really excited. Off chance that we met via email and we're able to make this happen, and looking forward to meeting you in person next year in conference. And as it goes, Mike, any words of closing from your end?
No, just thank you. I do, as someone, I know I personally struggle with, if I'm going to put something on social media that is confrontational, I often will be like, I'm just not going to say that. I don't want to deal with whatever comes from that. I really appreciate those that do. I haven't seen all your posts, but I've watched some of your posts, and lots of them I agree with what you're saying. And I'm like, I'm the guy eating popcorn on the other side of the screen being like, how is this going to go? So I appreciate people that are willing to take the stands for the things they believe in. So thanks for that.
Well, Dr. Marissa, with all of our guests, the last word is to you. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
The veterinary community to know that there is no one right way to be a veterinarian. And that is the beauty of the profession. And so if you want to think outside the box for your career, if you want to do it differently, I support you and encourage you, because I think that's, again, the beauty of this profession is that you can really make it your own.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap, on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the Veterinary Project Podcast at gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the Veterinary Project Podcast at gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.